Before I begin, just a quick reminder to encourage you to subscribe for more paranormal content, and if you have not done so already, to check you have clicked the bell icon next to my subscription box so you receive notifications of new videos. The following accounts have been submitted by subscribers. These stories are claimed to describe true events. I ask you to listen in good faith and decide for yourself what to believe. We live in the Quebec province of Canada, in a small village of roughly 2,000 inhabitants. My grandfather had land in a remote area of the region, and part of it extended to the shoreline of a lake. Some of my earliest childhood memories are of visiting there. During summer, we would drive up to my grandfather's prized location on his land. It was a quiet lakeshore made out of big rocks. We would go there almost every day that the weather permitted, even though it was a 45-minute drive each way. We would bring coolers full of food and beverages, and we would spend the day there, jumping from the highest rock, which was 5 meters tall, into the deep, dark waters. It was always so refreshing, and we had a lot of happy memories there. On my grandpa's land, there was also an old house that we would sometimes spend the night in. It was an old building with an old shed, and when it was a cold night, we would warm the place with a fire. We would start it in an old iron stove that people used before the invention of electric stoves. I was always fascinated by the stars there. At night, my father and I would share this passion, looking at them together. The sky was magnificent due to the lack of light pollution so far in the wilderness. We would spend hours watching the stars, and I would listen to my father explaining everything he knew about the cosmos, which was quite an extensive knowledge for someone who does not study in this field. I remember listening to him and asking a lot of questions. Sometimes we would fall asleep on our sleeping bags next to the fire, my young mind blown away by all the mysteries of the universe. My father was a game warden. He roamed the forests all year, watching for poachers, doing checkups on important wildlife hotspots, giving out tickets to hunters and fishermen who didn't respect the quotas. Because of this, thanks to my dad, I was always very comfortable in nature. He taught me everything he knew. I could identify an extensive array of trees, animals, fish, and plants. My father taught me to respect nature and its inhabitants, as well as how to survive in the wild and all those things. Those memories are also very precious to my heart. One night, when I was 16, my dad and I were staying at the house for the night with one of his cousins. We planned to go fishing at dawn. I loved fishing, and it is the only thing that would get me to wake up at 4 a.m. It was about midnight, and my dad asked me to make sure the fire we started in the fire pit outside was out, telling me to pour water on the embers if needed. I went outside and the embers were glowing, so I went to the water pump and started pumping water in the bucket. It was a partially cloudy night with an almost full moon. While pumping, I heard rustling in the woods behind me. At night, in the woods, a raccoon roaming around the camp can make a lot of noise. I was not scared as I had plenty of experience with wildlife. I knew it could have been anything, from a squirrel to a bear, and that, in the eventuality of a bear, there was a large population of black bears in the area, the best thing was to remain calm. My dad always told me that your worst enemy, while being lost or stranded in the woods at night, was not wolves, bears, or even the weather, it was panic. Panicking will make you do dangerous things, and will cloud your judgment. Remaining calm was vital in the wilderness. Besides, I knew my dad was a shout away with a firearm if needed. I turned to try and see what was making the sound. The wood line was about 40 feet from where I was standing. Just for a second, I saw a big shadow. The clouds opened, and at that instant I could see the outline of something big. It was big, I was used to seeing bears, and a bear would have looked small next to it. I realized I was looking around the height of what a bear would be up on their hind legs. But what I was actually seeing was taller still. It was a massive animal. I looked up, and what I saw froze the blood in my veins. Time stopped. I saw two big, reflecting eyes. They were orangish and giving off the typical glow of light which refracts off the layer of cells in the back of an animal's eyes to help them see in the dark. I felt a chill run down my spine and then into my legs. The eyes were at least 10 to 12 feet up, way too high for a bear. I could also see the outline of massive and wide shoulders. Bears do not have large shoulders. The animal was huge, at least 12 foot tall, with massive wide shoulders and long shaggy hair. The hair was outlined around its body and was maybe a foot long. There were no ears sticking out of its silhouette like you usually see in bears. I was trying to make sense of what I was seeing. I had never seen such an enormous beast in my life, and was certain nothing like this existed in all the books on fauna I had ever seen, and my dad had certainly never mentioned encountering something even close to this. I tried listening for telltale sounds, but all I could hear was my own blood rushing to my ears. I was dumbfounded and paralyzed. I tried looking over to the house for reassurance, but I could not move a muscle. I don't know how long we stood there, just looking at each other. It felt like an hour, but it was probably no more than a couple of seconds. The moment broke when I heard my father's voice calling my name. All at the same time that I heard my name, a horrible smell hit my nostrils, and that seemed to snap me out of my paralyzed state. I dropped the bucket I was holding in my hand, and the thing turned its head around towards the direction of the house. That move brought its head into the moonlight. I could now see it had a flat face with almost no hair on it. The color of its skin was hard to make out, but it was dark. There was no snout, it was flat. A big flat forehead with a big flat nose. A wide mouth with almost non-existent lips. And the eyes. They were round and big. It looked like a gorilla and a human face mixed together. After turning to the house, the creature turned its face towards me, and its upper lips went up like an animal baring their teeth into a snarl. I could see large teeth. I then heard a deep, loud but low growl. I could feel it as much as I could hear it. It felt like a vibration going through my entire body, like a sound wave so strong it makes your flesh vibrate. That woke my body up. I had never felt such terror in my entire life, before or since. It was a primal fear. I'm not sure how to explain it, but it felt like every cell in my body was screaming at me to move. Move, run, do not look back. I ran so fast that I was inside the house before I even realized I was moving. I never screamed. I couldn't. No sound could be made. It's like my vocal cords were frozen. My father saw that I was in a state of shock and asked me what happened repetitively as I didn't and couldn't answer. I was crying silently, my breath ragged as I trembled like a leaf. My father and his cousin then grabbed their guns and made a move to go outside, but I hysterically screamed at them to stay inside. My father looked at me with worry in his eyes, but stayed inside. After a while, I calmed down enough to be able to tell them what I saw. My father told me I had seen a bear and that my imagination got the best of me. I wanted to believe him very much, but I knew that what I had seen was no bear. It was way too big, and the silhouette was very different. It had a roundish head with a slight conic top, and apparently very little to no neck and no ears. Its fur was longer, its shoulders wider, and its height taller. It was no bear. Its eyes had an orange glow to them. Every bear I have ever seen at night has a more greenish color to them. The smell was also overwhelming, and that feeling of dread, that primal fear and deep urge to run away. I had always been curious about fauna and liked to observe all animals in the wild, but I did not feel that on that night. All I felt instead was pure terror. I started sobbing like a 5-year-old. My father rocked me in his arms, singing me a lullaby he sang me every night when I was younger. I fell asleep in front of the fire as the dawn came. We did not go fishing that morning. I slept for part of the morning, and when I woke up, the truck was all packed. My father's cousin went into the woods around the house to try and see any sign of animal activity, but found nothing except for broken branches in the dense, wet forest. On the route home, we talked about it more. My father was trying to convince me that what I think I saw didn't exist. He said that if such a creature was in the forests there, he would have seen it, or at least seen signs of it in his 20 years as a game warden. After all, if he had seen the elusive mountain lion with his own eyes multiple times, he would have surely seen, or at least caught a glimpse of, such an enormous animal. He put a smile on his face, saying again that I had misidentified a bear, repeating that my imagination had played tricks. But you could see that he was disturbed. Maybe it was disturbing to see his child in such a condition. Maybe what I said made him think. I refused to go to the lake for at least a year. Then I agreed to go swimming there, but we never slept there again, and I always made a fuss to never stay past dusk. I have hunted for information about what I saw ever since. I am not sure if what I saw was a Bigfoot or maybe a giant ape-like creature, but one thing I am sure of is that this was no bear. I am 32 now, and I still dream about what I saw when I was 16 from time to time. Now, every time I am in a forested area, I have that gut instinct to turn around and get out. I live in a big city now, and I will never go back to those woods ever again. My name is Alfred, and I am a contracted heavy equipment mechanic for ExxonMobil's pipeline division. Often, my job takes me to isolated locations. On one occasion, me and another mechanic called Raoul were called to a job site where a HDD rig, a horizontal directional drilling rig, had stopped working. The location was just east of Lafourche Parish in Louisiana. We both got there and immediately began repairing the rig. After working all afternoon, we had the rig running. It was nearly dark as Raoul and I packed up our tools and cleaned up our work area. In the distance, off in the woodline of the swamp, something started grunting at us. It sounded big, and I thought to myself that maybe it was a hog. Even so, it didn't sound like any hog or javelina I had ever heard before, and I hunt them yearly at my property in Van Horn, Texas. We just about finished cleaning up and putting our tools away when the grunting returned, even louder than before. This time, a swamp tree branch, at least 8 feet up in the tree, started shaking violently. The branch shaking and the grunting had me and Raoul on edge. We decided to leave then and there. The road away from the site was made of wooden mats laid next to each other. The ground was soft, and this was the only way to stop your vehicle from sinking into the ground. I was driving a company truck, a Ford F450 dually mechanic's body with a crane. Raoul was driving the same. We began driving toward the gate to exit the property when, out of nowhere, a large rock was thrown at Raoul's truck in front of me. It easily weighed 25 pounds or more and flew from the woodline and nearly hit his truck. At this point, Raoul laid it into the gas pedal and hauled out of there. I did too. We are drug tested by a pipeline drug testing consortium, and I am regularly tested 12 or more times a year. I did not hallucinate what we saw, and neither did Raoul. We still talk about what we experienced to this day. I don't know what was out there that night, but it was mad as hell that we were out there. I will never forget watching that rock fly towards the truck. It was big, flying in the air like a professional sportsman threw it. Whatever threw that rock easily threw it 60 or 70 yards, and it threw it like it was nothing. This happened last year. I was 14 at the time and my cousin John was 17. We live on a hill with trees on every side of the house and more hills, bigger hills on the north. Down the hill to the south is a lake. I love the area and always go there for a walk. Anyway, me and my cousin went off up the hill hunting, just for little things like birds. We had a pellet gun, an air hawk that looked like a real rifle. I remember it was quiet, too quiet, much quieter than normal. I kept telling my cousin that I felt like we were being watched. He said it's nothing, and we went higher up the hill. At the top there was a field, and from there we could see the lake and the mountains to the west. We had been sitting on some big rocks looking at the view for about 10 to 15 minutes when we heard a whistle down the hill. It came from the brushy area where you couldn't see more than 2 feet in. Our first thought was it was our cousin Jacob, so we called his name. No response. I was holding the pellet gun, so I asked John if I should shoot, just to scare him out. He said yeah, so I aimed it. As I looked in the woods down the hill, I felt off. I can't explain exactly how it felt, but I told my cousin that we should go back. He brushed me off and told me later, so I just said nothing and nodded my head. I didn't shoot. I felt like we were gonna waste ammo. It was then that we heard a loud scream in the woods. We were scared. Neither me or John had ever heard anything like that before. It was a muscular scream, like it had come from a big man, from a giant. Even though it was loud and not normal, we kept doing what we were doing, moving down the hill, hunting. Eventually, we ended up going down an old road. There were trees on each side and barely any sunlight. I was always scared of that area. We were walking when my cousin stopped suddenly. I stopped too, and he pointed up a tree far ahead. It was then that I saw it. It looked like a hairy kid, like it was the same size as a toddler. I asked him what it was, and he said maybe a bear. Bears are common in my area, so I just went with it. We figured the mom was close by, so we went the opposite side. Still moving down the hill, we headed down to the river. There we saw a strange track in the dirt. It was big and looked like a human's bare foot. Neither one of us had seen anything like it in the woods before, but as soon as I saw it, I knew it was a Bigfoot. Remembering the thing we had seen in the tree, I told my cousin about Bigfoot. I knew he knew it was no animal we'd ever seen before. I asked him if he knew what it was, but he just said it was a bear so I wouldn't freak out. As it was small, I thought maybe it was a baby Bigfoot. John just mumbled maybe as we carried on walking. We headed east. There were some big trees in that part of the woods and a house a couple of yards to the south. We had not seen anything for a while and it was getting dark. It was about 9 p.m. and we turned north to head back up the hill to go home. The only way back was through that old road. Nobody comes out to this part of the woods. We were the only ones in the area, or we should have been. Up the hill, where the road opened out to a field, there was something standing by a lone tree. It was dark, so we couldn't really see what it was, only that there was something there. Keep in mind, all we had was a pellet gun, and we weren't expecting anyone to be out there, especially not at night. We just lay down by a fallen tree and watched, looking at whatever it was that was standing at the top of the hill. Around 5 minutes later, we saw 2 smaller things walk out of the woods. We were lucky we didn't keep walking. If we had, well, I don't want to think about what we might have walked into on that old road. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this, please do subscribe and turn on all notifications for more paranormal content. Currently, only a small percentage of you are receiving notifications, with many of you missing the videos we publish. Only by enabling notifications and turning on YouTube notifications on your device will YouTube notify you when we publish a new video. I kindly ask if you could ensure that you are fully subscribed. My husband Eric and I love making the videos we do and greatly appreciate and rely upon your support. With that said, if you want to show support for our work and cannot wait until our next video, why not watch the one suggested on screen now? Until next time.